Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a luxury beauty showdown between Chanel and Cle De Peau. So Chanel and Cle De Peau are two of my favorite luxury beauty brands. And a question I get all the time is, what brand would I choose if I could just choose one brand to buy from? Would it be Chanel, Chantecaille, Cle De Peau? So I thought this would be fun to do a little beauty showdown. So I'm basically choosing two of my favorite products from each category between the brands and showing off which one I would choose if I could pick a number one favorite. And then I'm going through all the categories and which I choose more of the Cle De Peau favorites versus which I chose more of the Chanel favorites. And then at the end, obviously choosing a favorite brand between the two. This is obviously just a lighthearted video, and I don't actually have a favorite brand between these two. I just thought it would be fun to do a little bit of a showdown because Cle De Peau and Chanel are two of my favorite brands. Like I said, they're both brands that really focus on enhancing your natural beauty. So they really focus on just makeup that makes you look more beautiful versus it just looking like you have a ton of makeup on. And that's my favorite type of makeup that just enhances your natural beauty, that's very flattering, that's really elegant and beautiful, that you can wear in any situation. So you can wear it for every day. You can wear it to work. You can also wear it to a really special evening event, and it's makeup that just makes you feel so special and glamorous because the packaging's special and just the whole experience. So I thought this would just be a fun video. If you guys want to see me do this with other brands and do a little showdown between other beauty brands, I would love to hear from you and let me know your thoughts on this video. But if you want to see this luxury beauty showdown and which beauty brand is my favorite, then just keep watching. I'm actually going to start with the skin today. I'm not going to go in with a primer, but when I was thinking of the best of foundations between Chanel versus Cle De Peau, my top 10 favorites include quite a lot of Chanel and Cle De Peau products. So in my top 10 is the Chanel Les Beige Water Fresh Tint, also the Chanel Sublimage L'Essence de Teint. For Cle De Peau, I have the Cle De Peau The Foundation, the Cle De Peau Radiant Fluid Foundation Natural, the Cle De Peau Radiant Cushion Foundation Dewy, and the Cle De Peau Radiant Cream Foundation. All these foundations are in my top 10. So I just thought I would choose a top contender out of these foundations. So I love every single one of these foundations, but when I thought of the number one foundation, honestly, the top three I would say is the Chanel Sublimage L'Essence de Teint, the Cle De Peau The Foundation, and the Cle De Peau Radiant Cushion, the Radiant Cushion Foundation Dewy. These are probably my top three favorite foundations of the ones that I've mentioned. I love the Water Fresh Tint, but it's just such a light coverage that I wouldn't really even classify it as a foundation, and it's hard to recommend to every single person. But I absolutely love these three foundations. Choosing a favorite was so difficult, and honestly, the top two was probably between the Cle De Peau The Foundation, the Chanel Sublimage L'Essence de Teint. So I did decide to go with the Chanel Sublimage L'Essence de Teint just because when I was thinking of a foundation just to an overall favorite, I don't use the Cle De Peau The Foundation on an every single day basis just because of how pricey it is. It's something that I don't want to use every day because I don't want to have to repurchase a $350 foundation every like 3 months, you know what I mean? Where the Chanel Sublimage L'Essence de Teint, yes, it's still expensive, but it's not as expensive with it as this one. And I have no problem with having to repurchase this one over and over because it's just, you know, a little bit less expensive. And this one does have more than a fluid ounce. It has 1.35 fluid ounces, which is a little better than some other foundations. So that's why I decided to go with the Chanel Sublimage L'Essence de Teint. I also feel like the Chanel Sublimage L'Essence de Teint is just maybe a little more universally friendly because it's more of a satin finish, leaning more on the glowy side, where the Cle De Peau definitely leans more on the dewier side, I want to say. So I just took a pump of the Chanel Sublimage L'Essence de Teint, distributed on the palm of my hand, and I'm just going to apply that with this Shiseido brush, apply it all over the skin. So the thing I love about this foundation is that I can use it on an everyday basis because it looks so beautiful on the skin on an everyday basis, but it's also such a special foundation, and I use this foundation when it counts. So when I really want my foundation to look really special and beautiful in person, but also maybe if I'm taking pictures for it to also look beautiful in photos, this is the foundation I reach for because it just has such a beautiful, sophisticated finish to it. It probably is my most elegant finished foundation because it's not too glowy on the skin. It has this beautiful kind of soft candlelight glow. And because of the subtle luminous to this foundation, it almost reflects the light in a way where it blurs the skin. So if you don't know, my favorite foundations blur the skin. They have this soft focus filtered effect on the skin. And that is exactly what this foundation does for me. It's gorgeous, and it's gorgeous every single time. And even though this gives me a really nice amount of coverage, it's not too much coverage, so I'm never gonna look cakey or like I have too much makeup on my face when I use this foundation. But it's not like a barely there foundation where you can't detect it on the skin, like kind of like the Chanel Water Fresh tint. This is like a barely there, no makeup. This has a makeup quality to it, but it's not gonna look like heavy makeup on your skin. It still looks very skin-like, especially just in the finish of it. It is just perfection, and I'm always happy with this foundation every time I use it. And I also like it because if I want a light coverage, I can just get away with a light coverage, but it can be built up to that medium coverage. So maybe if I am going out for dinner or there is a more special occasion, I can build it up to that medium coverage. Or maybe if I just have a breakout going on or my skin's a little irritated or a little upset, I can just go in with an additional layer and it still looks skin-like, but it gives me a little bit more coverage. It's just one of the most beautiful foundations. So between this foundation battle, I have to say the Chanel Sublimage L'Essence de Teint wins. I have repurchased this foundation. This is my third bottle. And with the Cle De Peau, the foundation, I mean, technically this is my fourth bottle if we count the previous formulation. But of the reformulated Cle De Peau, the foundation, this is my second bottle. So I love them equally, but I would just say, as an all-rounder, I feel like the Chanel Sublimage L'Essence de Teint is maybe one that I would recommend as a whole to everyone. Because I think even if you have oily skin, you could set this foundation and you could use a mattifying primer underneath and it would work really beautifully for you as well. Let's talk about concealers. So I guess the battle of concealers, you could say, is the Cle De Peau, the concealer. Chanel does have a little concealer, like a kind of, what do you call these ones with a little tube? They have one of those, but I don't like that concealer, so I'm not even going to talk about that one. If we're talking about facial concealers, Cle De Peau, the concealer, wins all day. This is the perfect facial concealer. I have mine in the shade Almond. This is they recently reformulated this concealer, and this is the new version of the concealer. So I like to use this on the face. So I have a little spot there. I'll just dab it into the skin. So I like to just take a little bit of concealer and just dab it on any areas where there may be a little bit more discoloration. This also works really nicely in the outer corners of my eyes. However, it does not work well underneath the eyes. So for me, this would be the best facial concealer, but I do not love it under the eyes. But if you're looking for a great facial concealer, if you're someone with discoloration and needs a little bit more coverage in areas, say you just want your skin to look really beautiful and natural, but you want to go in with a little bit more pigment in specific areas, therefore you don't have to go in with a full coverage foundation all over your skin, this is a fantastic option. It is really skin-like. It has a very good coverage and it stays all day. It doesn't ever move or doesn't crease or doesn't fade away throughout the day. It remains consistent. If we're talking under eyes though, Cle De Peau did have a radiant concealer under eye pen that I love, but it looks like they've discontinued it. I don't even know if they're reformulating it. So if we're talking about the under eyes, Chanel wins, and that is their Chanel Sublimage Lip Correcteur Yeux. I have my in the shade 20, but I should have got the shade 30 because this is a little bit too light for me. However, this is an absolutely beautiful concealer. This is something I also got my mom to pick up, and she really likes this as well. So I just go in with a little brush. So I'm just using this Cle De Peau brush. I think it's just a concealer brush. What I like to do is I will just apply a little bit of product. You do just need a small amount of this concealer. A little bit goes a long way. This does have I would say a medium coverage. I definitely applied too much. That's the one problem with it being in this jar, is that I tend to go in with a little bit too much product. So I'll just go in with that little bit of product, and it's definitely a thicker concealer, so it does feel almost like a serum texture. It feels almost like an eye cream, but that it has a pigment to it. But I really like a thicker concealer because sometimes when concealers have that really thin consistency, I actually find that it settles into lines easier when they are really thin. But because this is thicker, it almost it just like hydrates the eyes and really just doesn't settle into those fine lines because it does have some skincare benefits to it. And I just love this concealer. It has an illumination to it without it being shimmery. Like, there are no shimmer particles, but it does brighten the under eyes, and there is a little bit of a glow to it, again, without being shimmery. So it refracts the light very beautifully, again, aiding to that blurred appearance so that it almost looks like your fine lines are more filled in because it's refracting that light. So I love concealers that are able to do this. So if you're looking for an under eye concealer between the two brands, definitely recommend Chanel. Even though the packaging is super annoying, the product inside is really beautiful and it's very high quality. But then if you're looking for a facial concealer, I have to give that to Cle De Peau because this is just the best facial concealer out there. There is nothing better. You can't convince me otherwise. I've never found anything that can top this concealer. It's amazing. Maybe I can just show you this in the outside corner as well. I'll just apply a little bit. You could also just go in with that Chanel concealer on the outer corner of the eye. But sometimes I have a little bit of darkness on this outside corner, and I like to add just a lifting effect out here because I like my eyes to look a little bit more lifted versus sometimes they can just look maybe a little sad. I usually would do this after I've applied eyeshadow, so maybe I should have waited for that step, but that's okay. I can just show you now because I am talking about this product now, but this is just such a good facial concealer, so I definitely recommend the Cle De Peau, and that is the winner if we're talking about facial concealers. For cream blushes, we have the Chanel Water Fresh Blush and also the Cle De Peau Beauté Cream Blush. So I have to give the winner to the Cle De Peau Cream Blush just because I feel like this formula is a little bit less finicky, I want to say. The Water Fresh tint, the Water Fresh blush, you have to use it with like-minded products. So you'd want to use this with a water-based foundation. It's a little bit more finicky because it comes out as a liquid blush, and then you have to kind of break up the beads and then apply it to the skin. So for that reason, it can take a little bit more effort to apply this blush. It does look very beautiful on the skin. If you want that very beautiful skin-like finish, this is a blush I'd recommend, but then you have to be careful about what foundations you're pairing it with. It does pair with the Chanel Sublimage that I used today very well, but it doesn't pair well with all foundations. If you're using a silicone-based foundation, this will pill. So for that reason, I have to recommend the Cle De Peau because it's just a better option universally. This is available in the US. In Canada, they've discontinued this. I don't know if they'll be bringing it back. This is the shade number 3. It's not my favorite shade. I wish I could pick up the shade number 1. So I'm really jealous of you in the US if you can pick up that shade because I think it's called Perfect Peach. I would love to get my hands on it. I have been in the US, but I haven't been to a Cle De Peau counter where they sell Cle De Peau, so I haven't been able to pick it up. If I'm ever in the US, I would love to pick it up. Or if any of you know of places where Cle De Peau will ship to Canada, like Nordstrom doesn't ship to Canada, so I can't order it from there. But if you know, I would absolutely love to hear from you because I just feel like this formula is very flattering. It's more of a matte finish, and it's just such an easy product to work with. It really reminds me of the Persona cream blushes, but I would say, you know what, yeah, they're quite similar, except I do kind of like this packaging because it's a little easier just to access versus the stick blushes. I just think this is a very flattering blush, and it has that beautiful technology where even though it's a cream blush, it has almost a powdery dry down so that it's one of those cream blushes that blurs the skin. Sometimes cream blushes can actually enhance texture or emphasize texture and make texture look worse because they're so dewy on the skin, but this one does dry down, so it's just a very beautiful skin enhancing blush. Easy to work with. It's not too matte of a blush that it's hard to blend on the skin. So the cream blush winner goes to Cle De Peau. So let's talk blushes. I did want to just talk about permanent products because I want this to be a reference video so people can watch this 2 years from now and they will be able to get the products. However, Chanel can be interesting. They tend to reformulate their blushes quite often. This is the shade Elegance, and I do know that you can't get this in the United States. You can only get it in Canada and the UK. In the US, I believe a similar tone would be something like Jersey. However, right now, their winter collection is available, and I would say my absolutely favorite blush from Chanel currently is this Le Beige Healthy Winter Glow Blush in the shade Mauve Glace. Glace, I'm probably saying that very wrong. But I really, really love this color, and I would say it's my favorite Chanel blush that I have that you can access, that you can get right now. I like it a little bit better than this Elegance blush. This is just so old, and it's a little bit more shimmery than what I like in my blushes now. I did used to really like this like 3 years ago when I was into more shimmery blushes. Their formula, Chanel's formula currently, they did reformulate their blushes, and they made them so matte, but not a flattering matte. They made them in a way where they look dry on the skin. So I was a little disappointed with their reformulation. But fortunately, Chanel is always reformulating, and I'm pretty sure within the next year or two, we'll probably have a reformulation of their blushes again. So I'm sure that we're going to see an even better version. Now, if we're talking about Cle De Peau, unfortunately, this seems to be discontinued, and it seems like they are reformulating, but I obviously wanted to mention a blush. This is my favorite. I still think you can get these at some sites. This is the Cle De Peau Blush Duo in the shade number 105. I forget the name of it, but it's number 105. This is such a beautiful formula. Now, if you can't get your hands on this, the most identical formula is the Valentino blushes, because they have, it's almost like that, it's like a cream to powder formula, and that is exactly what this Cle De Peau blush is feeling like. So I would suggest the Valentino blush in the shade number 9 if you're looking for something the most similar to this blush, because I would say the formulas are very, very similar. And I love this formulation. It is so creamy. It feels like a fabric when you touch this formulation. I was really upset when I heard when I saw that these had left the site. So again, I'm pretty sure the next release we're going to see from Cle De Peau is going to be their blush reformulation. I'm going to go ahead and say, based on all their reformulations, I'm going to love that, but I will absolutely be picking up blushes if I notice that they are on sale. But the winner between even the new formula of this Chanel blush, the Chanel Elegance blush, and this Cle De Peau blush, the winner goes to Cle De Peau blush. This would be my absolute favorite blush if you could get your hands on it. But unfortunately, like I said, it seems to be discontinued, so I don't like talking about it all that much. But I'm going to go ahead and use it today, and I'm just going to go back and forth between these two colors because I just like the mix. Tap off that excess product, and I'm going to tap it onto the skin, and it is just the most gorgeous formula. It definitely has pigment to it, but it's not too overly pigmented. It's easy to blend. When you apply it onto the skin, like I said, it applies like a powder product, but it melts into the skin like a cream product would. And this has a little bit of a sheen to it, but it is such a beautiful sheen. And it's the type of sheen that, again, refracts that light so that it blurs the skin. It filters your skin, and it just makes your skin look more beautiful. So it's a very skin-enhancing blush, which are my favorite. It just makes your cheeks, it's like your cheeks but better. Absolutely gorgeous. So this is definitely my favorite blush between the two brands. For bronzers, we have the Cle De Peau Bronzing Powder Duo in the shade number 2. And then I also have the Chanel Le Beige Soleil Tan Bronze in the shade 390. Now this is the reformulated version that they released in their summer collection, the Le Beige collection last year. It does seem to still be available, and this is my favorite reformulation that they have done, so I decided to include this. I love this one because the reformulation had a little bit of a better finish. It did set down to the skin, so it was a cream to powder formulation. It seemed to blur the skin a little bit better, and I just think that this version is a little bit more beautiful on the skin. It's less shiny on the skin. This Cle De Peau bronzer, I love this duo. So this duo right here, this tone right here is a little bit more of a red tone, and it's a little bit deeper. And then this shade right here is a little bit more on the golden side, and it has a teeny bit of a sheen to it. But again, these powders are so gorgeous. They're just very finely milled. They're easy to apply. And I'm going to have to give the winner to the Cle De Peau one. I don't use these bronzers all the time. Like, I definitely use my Hermes bronzer more. But if I had to choose a favorite between these, it's definitely the Cle De Peau. And you can see I've dipped it to the side a little bit more often. Or maybe you can't see. There's a little bit more of a dent. But I just have to give the winner to the Cle De Peau. I just think the formulation is very creamy. It's very forgiving on the skin. It's very buildable. It's very blendable. It's gorgeous. This is my mom's favorite bronzer as well, so I know that it works beautifully for mature skin. It doesn't look like, you can still get this on the site. It doesn't look like they're reformulating this bronzer yet. They may, because they seem to be redoing their line, so I wonder if they will. but currently it doesn't look like they are, so this is definitely my favorite. So I just usually like to dip in between the two. I think I'm gonna go, because that Chanel foundation was a little bit more on the neutral tone, I'm gonna dip a little bit more into the golden side with a little bit of sheen to it. I don't really care if I get into both halves, it doesn't matter to me. But you can see I like to be light-handed with how I dip into the bronzer, and then I always tap off that excess product, and then I will just go into the skin. And I just think this bronzer is beautiful. If you're looking just for a subtle bronzer, it's nothing too extreme, nothing too crazy. This is a great formulation. It doesn't look powdery on the skin. It doesn't look heavy on the skin. It's just a very beautiful bronzer formula. It's a typical powder formula, so it's not one of those like big gelées where you require a more dense brush. You can use any brush that you have, and the pigmentation is beautiful. Just everything about this bronzer I think is very flattering. Whenever I use this, I'm always like, why don't I use this bronzer more? It's so gorgeous. So the winner for bronzer is the Cle De Peau bronzer. Let's chat highlighters. So the interesting thing is I actually do not have a permanent Chanel highlighter. I have limited edition Chanel highlighters because I'm gonna just tell you here on out, an honest opinion. The Cle De Peau permanent highlighters are not very good. I don't think they're that great, which is probably why they always are releasing these limited edition highlighters. My favorite limited edition highlighter is this Chanel Rêve de Camellia, the illuminating powder. Diana, one of my subscribers, actually sent this to me because it sold out in Canada. It's my most special makeup item in my collection. And I, of course, always thank you, Diana. That was so kind and sweet of you. But it's just such a gorgeous highlighter. Oh, just so elegant and so beautiful. I love to use this for more special occasions because it's just so flattering on the skin. It just makes your skin look healthy and gorgeous. Cle De Peau, now they reformulated their highlighters because again, they're going through this reformulation. So this is the Cle De Peau, the Luminizing Face Enhancer. I have the shade 22 Shooting Stars and also the shade 202 Golden Galaxy. So this is the shade Golden Galaxy. This is probably the most skin tone flattering on my skin. I really love the Shooting Stars one because it's a little bit more skin-like. It's a little bit less intense than this one. The ones with 2 digits, so 22 Shooting Stars, they're less intense versions. The ones with 3 digits, like the 202 Golden Galaxy, those are the more intense highlighters. So if you're looking for something a little bit more intense, this Cle De Peau highlighter is it. It is so beautiful. Even though it's intense, it still doesn't look too intense where you're glowing from space. There's still a very beautiful natural quality to it, I want to say. So I just like to take a little bit of product. I like to use an eyeshadow brush, actually. And then I'll just apply it to the tops of the cheekbones. And this is a gorgeous highlighter because there aren't glitter particles to it, but it is very shiny. But it gives you just more of that healthy glow. So it's intense, it's shiny on the skin, gives you that wet sort of look, but there's no actual thick glitter particles or anything like that. Even though it's definitely more intense than their previous version, I think this shade is absolutely gorgeous. And the more you buff it into the skin, the more skin-like and more seamless it looks on the skin, and it is just so flattering and so, so beautiful. So if you didn't know, the winner of that round is the Cle De Peau Luminizing Face Enhancers. I do want to just disclose that they do, when you purchase these, they have a glitter overspray when you first buy them. So you do have to kind of get past that glitter overspray because if you first apply this highlighter to the skin without removing that glitter overspray, then you'll have those glitter particles. So I don't know why they do that. I mean, it looks really pretty, but I just don't like how they have that glitter overspray because then you risk getting glitter on the skin. So I just removed that glitter overspray and now it's a very smooth, beautiful highlighter. And this packaging, like, I'm sorry, that is just stunning. So Cle De Peau is the winner for the highlight. And finally, we have the battle of the powders. Now, I actually do not like Chanel's powders. They recently reformulated the sheer press powder. If you guys have tried the reformulation, please let me know if it's any better. I decluttered mine because that powder hard panned after a while. It was a nice sheer powder and I really do like that it was a sheer powder so it was undetectable on the skin, but I didn't like that it hard panned and after like 5 uses you couldn't even use it because it hard panned. My favorite powder from Cle De Peau is the Cle De Peau Refining Pressed Powder. Now they have reformulated the pressed powder. The previous version was in this compact here. They have reformulated it into this packaging. I think it is even more beautiful. So stunning, just like a very classic packaging. It's so gorgeous. This powder here, it looks translucent and it pretty much is translucent. It has a slight shift of a pink to it. And this powder just how smooth this feels. Ugh, can't get enough of it. And I'm very happy to report this reformulation is superb. They did a great job. I don't really notice a difference, if I'm being honest. It does the exact same blurring capability. It looks very skin-like, and I really like this powder especially because it doesn't add coverage or color to the skin. A lot of the times with those tinted powders, they're going to add a little bit of coverage to the skin, but I already like how my skin looks, and all I want to do from here on out is blur the skin. So I blur the pores, blur the look of texture on my skin, and have that filtered effect. So it kind of looks like I've applied a filter to my skin, but I haven't. It's just this powder. This powder is phenomenal. It's exceptional. Really happy with this reformulation. So thankfully, they did not ruin the reformulation. Some of you asked me that, and I think it's just as beautiful. I think I'm actually just going to quickly do my lips. So my favorite lipsticks from each brand, this is actually a new buy for me, but I just picked up the Cle De Peau Rouge à Lèvres lipstick. I think it's just called like the lipstick because with Cle De Peau, they're such a fantastic brand. They can just call their products like the foundation and get away with it because they're so good. But this is just the lipstick in the shade number 11, Triumphant Tawny. Gorgeous, like the packaging again, very sleek, very beautiful, but this formula is gorgeous. And then my favorite lipstick formula from Chanel is the Chanel Rouge Cocoa Flashes. My favorite shade is the shade Boy. I really love this formula. It's basically a lipstick lip gloss hybrid. It almost feels oily on the lip, so it kind of melts on contact. It is just a gorgeous formula. One of my favorite products of all time, but I'm gonna have to go with the Cle De Peau lipstick this time. I really love this formulation. This formula reminds me of the Merit Signature Lightweight Lipstick because it's so lightweight on the lips. It's a sheerish lipstick, but it has a nice satin finish. It feels moisturizing without it feeling like it's going to fall outside the lip lines on your lips. So it has a little bit of that gloss formula, but it's a nice sheer color. I think this color is absolutely gorgeous if you like a little bit more of a nude lipstick. It's not super nude though, there's still some color to it. This formula is so comfortable. It's one of those formulas where your lips still feel comfortable a few hours in. Of course, this lipstick will not last you very long, so you're gonna have to touch up with this sort of product, but I don't mind that because my lips feel even better with this product on it. It's not quite as hydrating or as moisturizing or as lip mask as a feeling as like the Chantecaille Lip Cheeks or even the Chanel Rouge Cocoa Flashes. This one's a little bit more moisturizing, but I love the finish of this lipstick. I think it's just so flattering. It's beautiful. It's easy to touch up with. So the winner is going to have to be Cle De Peau. That one kind of surprised me, but I'm loving that lipstick, and I don't even need a lip liner with that. With the Rouge Cocoa Flashes, sometimes I feel like I need a lip liner with them, but let's move on to lip glosses. So I have the Cle De Peau Brilliant Radiant Lip Gloss in the shade number 3 Charm. That's probably my favorite shade. And then the favorite shade for Chanel, this is the Chanel Rouge Cocoa Gloss in the shade 804. I believe it's Rose Nave, if I'm not mistaken. This looks like a bright pink, but when you apply it on the lips, it's a very sheer color. They're not very opaque lip glosses. They just give a very slight hint of color. This Cle De Peau lip gloss has a little bit more color to it, a little bit more coverage, but again, I'm going to have to give the winner to Cle De Peau. I do wish they would have these in more shades, but this formula is my favorite lip gloss. Probably between that and the Chantecaille lip gloss, because it's such a thin consistency. The Chanel lip gloss is definitely thicker, and sometimes I find that the Chanel lip gloss does settle a little bit into lip lines, but this Cle De Peau one does not. It's so moisturizing. It's so comfortable. It's such a thin formula. It feels hydrating. When this wears off your lips feel really great afterwards. It doesn't feel like you've lost that hydration, because sometimes with lip glosses, it almost like sucks the moisture out of your lips after a while. You just feel like you have to keep on reapplying that lip gloss. But this formula keeps my lips hydrated. It doesn't settle into lip lines. It's such a great formulation. I do kind of like to rub my lip products in though, just so they look a little bit more lipped in. But yeah, I feel like these lip glosses are severely underrated. I don't hear anyone talking about them, but they are honestly really, really good. So that's my favorite lip gloss formula between the two. Finally, let's move on to the eyes. So my favorite eyeshadow palette from Chanel is this Le Beige Healthy Glow Natural Eyeshadow Palette in the shade Intense. Gorgeous. They're more satin shades. There's one shade in here that has a little bit more shimmer particles. I wouldn't say it's a straight up glitter, but there is more intermittent shimmer. Beautiful sheen. I like to use this more in the fall time. I think it is a summer palette because it's part of the Le Beige, But to me, this seems more like a fall palette to me. But I love this neutral color story. I love that they're all shimmers. They're so flattering on the eyes. A very easy formula to work with. Less powdery than some of the other Le Beige palettes that were released previously. And then we have the Cle De Peau. They recently reformulated the eyeshadows. This is just the eyeshadow quad in the shade number 2 Beach Pebbles. This is so fantastic. So this right here, every palette, this shade in this corner, is an eyeshadow primer. So you're, I guess, technically supposed to use it first on the lid, and it makes the eyeshadows apply even more seamlessly, even more smoothly, and gives a little bit more color payoff. You don't have to use it in that order, and even if you don't use this shadow, the eyeshadows blend like a dream. They're very high quality, but this is such an interesting, like, putty consistency. You have to feel it to know what I'm talking about, but it does feel like putty, like Play-Doh. It moves about. And then the rest of these eyeshadows are just a typical powder formula, but they're so easy to work with. They just look so flattering on the eyes. It's hard to describe, but until you've tried this eyeshadow formulation out, because it just looks so fantastic. Again, this is an eyeshadow palette that my mom purchased, and she loves it as well, and she is 65, so it works well on her mature eyes. And my favorite between the two, Cle De Peau, and it's not even like a question, like, this is hands down my favorite between the two. Yes, the Chanel one is still beautiful, but this one just, it wins. So I'm going to start off with this primer shade here on this Sonia G flat brush and just apply it all over the lid. So these primer shades, I think I'm going to pick up the shade number, I think it's 4, like Ocean Sunrise. That one looks really beautiful. It's almost like this, but just a deeper color story. So I'd really like to try that one out. But these eyeshadow quads, this primer shade has a little bit of a sheen, but it's nothing too dramatic or anything. It's a very subtle sheen. I'm going to just dip into this shade here. It's like the perfect transition shade. And with these, you can be a little heavier handed with your brush. I still like to go in slowly. And just because the pigment, this isn't like super ultra pigmented, because both Cle De Peau and Chanel, they have such sophisticated formulas that usually they're not ultra pigmented right off the bat. So you can build them up, but that makes it really easy to work with, really beginner friendly. And I'm someone that doesn't really like super intense makeup, so that works for me. I would rather have a sheer or light color payoff than something ultra pigmented where I have to be super duper careful. And I'm kind of just running this all over the eye, focusing it more on the outer corner and in the crease, but I'm applying it all over the eye as well. Like, this is just so easy to apply. It almost requires no work. These shadows are gorgeous. I'm going to dip into this deepest shade in the palette. This has a little bit of shimmer, and I'm going to use a bit of a thicker, dense brush, and this is a BK Beauty 204 brush, because I almost want a thicker liner today, and I'm being just haphazard, applying it against the lash line, but I'm not being too precise here. I do want some definition on the lash line. Again, not being super precise here. Kind of bringing it a little higher up than normal, and then I'm going to take a bit more of that product. I'm going to kind of flick it up in the outer corner to create a little wedge shape just on the outside, just to add a little bit of depth there as well. And yeah, I'm definitely making the eyeshadow thicker along the lash line, not being precise at all, almost bringing it up into the lid. And then finally, I'm going to take this shimmer shade here. This does have a bit of pigmentation, more so than the other shades, so I'm being light-handed. Beautiful beige champagne shade, and just applying that all over the eyelid for a little bit of sheen. But you can just see this palette would work for any occasion. I can wear this for every day and it looks absolutely beautiful and classic. Still very subtle but sophisticated and elegant, but I could wear this for a special occasion as well, because again, this color story is just so soft and beautiful and looks gorgeous in person. I'm also going to take a little bit of this match. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go back and forth between these two shades and run that across the lower lash line. Just from the outer corner, working inwards. And finally, for eyeliner, I have to admit I have never tried the Cle De Peau eyeliners, so if you guys have tried them, please let me know. But I'm going to have to give this to the Chanel because, well, I've never tried the Cle De Peau eyeliner, so that's a winner by default. But I just want to re-mention this Chanel. This is the Contour, the long-lasting eyeliner in the shade number 76, Brune Platine. And I just really love this shade. Yes, it's limited edition, but this shade is so gorgeous. I am really considering picking up a backup because it just makes my eyes pop. So I'm popping this into the waterline. I'm gonna bring it a little bit outside the waterline so that I'm gonna go blend this in a little bit as well, but what a flattering shade. One of you did mention in my comments that someone mentioned that this dried out. I'm gonna keep an eye on that and I'll let you guys know. Mine hasn't dried out yet, but of course I will definitely update you if that changes and it does dry out. But maybe just make sure the lid is really secure on it, because I've noticed if I even pop the lid, if the lid just comes off even ever so slightly on some eyeliners, they'll dry out pretty fast. So I haven't noticed that yet, but again, I'll keep you updated. Blending out that eyeliner on the outer corner, just softly. So for mascara, I just went in with the Westman Atelier I Want You mascara. I actually currently do not have any mascaras from Cle De Peau or Chanel in my arsenal. I do like the Chanel Lash Primer, and I do like, oh, I forget what that Chanel mascara was called, but Chanel mascaras are just not my #1 favorites. And I've never tried the Cle De Peau mascara just because I do have to say a lot of luxury mascara brands, their mascaras are just so natural and so light that I don't typically love them. But if you guys have tried out the Cle De Peau mascara or a Chanel mascara that's your favorite, please let me know and I'll have to try that out. So I just went in with the Westman Atelier, and the more I'm using it, I am liking it. It's very subtle and soft and natural, so I feel like it suits this look very beautifully, just because this look altogether is kind of just beauty enhancing. So I'm going to go over the winners here. So for foundation, we had a Chanel winner. The concealer was also a Chanel winner. And then was there any more Chanel? Oh, for eyeliner, we had a Chanel winner. But everything else was Cle De Peau. So that's pretty good, I would say. The powders, Cle De Peau. Eyeshadow, Cle De Peau. Cream blush, Cle De Peau. Powder blush, Cle De Peau. Bronzer, Cle De Peau. Highlighter, Cle De Peau. Lipstick, Cle De Peau. And lip gloss, Cle De Peau. So we have 8 Cle De Peau winners and 3 Chanel winners. So I guess Battle of the Beauty brand, Cle De Peau is the winner. I obviously love both of these brands, and this was more just for fun. Don't take it too seriously. Obviously, I love these brands, and I'd love to do this with other brands if you have any suggestions, but this is the final look. I hope you guys enjoyed this style of video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Like this video if you like it, and I'll see you in my next video.